Okay, friends, welcome back to the fifth and final segment of the lecture, where we are going to talk about plant defenses. So we just spoke a lot about all the different ways that insects consume and damage plants, and even though plants are sessile and they can't swat the insects off of them, they do not take all of this damage lying down. So, plant defenses are present and evolved most likely to keep insects from eating them, and there are several different kinds of plant defenses, and these can include things that are physical deterrents, like spines and hairs that are found on the leaves, silica that's present in the leaf tissues that will basically dull the mandibles of chewing insects over time, also not so easy to digest. Um, Many plants will camouflage their leaf shapes so that insects are not really able to recognize them as being leaves. But most commonly, and what we're going to spend most of our time talking about for the next few minutes, is noxious phytochemicals, also known as allelochemicals. And these are plant-produced toxic chemicals which deter or prevent insects from feeding on them. And these can include things like phenolic tannins. So phenol, as you might remember from organic chemistry, not so good, right? It's like a benzene ring with a hydroxyl group on it. Really nasty and damaging. It can also include terpenoid oils, which smell nice, but again, not so good in your digestive system, or alkaloids, so alkaline toxins that are, again, very highly damaging to digestive tissues. So, plant defenses. Allelochemicals are generally classified into two separate broad groups. The first is qualitative or toxic. So these effectively work as poisons in very small quantities, and they include things like alkaloids and cyanogenic glycosides. So these are things like that alkaloids and cyanogenic glycosides are specific compounds that you find in milkweed. And as you may know, there are very few insects that are capable of feeding on milkweed. And I don't know if you've ever broken off a milkweed leaf from a plant itself, but it frosts milky stuff, thus the name. And if you taste it, it's incredibly bitter, bright, and alkaline tasting. And these are usually produced by unapparent or rare and short-lived plants, like milkweed. Then there are also quantitative plant defenses, or qualitative toxins, allelochemicals, and these act in proportion to their concentration, or the amount of the plant that is consumed. So these tend to be things like tannins that are found in oaks and maples, resins, and silica. And they are usually produced by apparent and common long-lived plants, so things that are going to be around for a very long time and that are going to have leaves that are very easily recognizable and are highly likely to be fed on. Okay, so the question is to defend or not to defend. That is the question, perhaps for an end. So some plants have constitutive defenses where chemicals are present in the foliage at all times, or only in certain parts of the leaves at specific times, like in new leaves, the tenderest and most appetizing to insects. But the idea with constitutive defenses is even if they're present only some of the times, they're present regardless of whether or not an insect pest is present or a phytophagous insect is present or not. This is in contrast to induced defenses, which are when allelochemicals are produced only upon some kind of damage to the plant. So many of these induced defenses include things like protease inhibitor proteins that will reduce the palatability of the plant to the insect, and or interfere with the insect's ability to digest the protein, right? Proteases are enzymes that digest proteins, and an inhibitor of these would just prevent them from being able to break down the proteins in the plants. Other induced defenses include things like semiochemicals that might attract a parasitoid or a predator to the site where the pest is. So that would be very nice. That would be like a cinnamon, right? From before. And some of these other induced defenses might also signal to other plants that other same species or even unrelated species that there is an insect around and that is eating them, and so that they should get ready and start upregulating their defenses, because if they're getting eaten and their neighbors. It probably won't be long until the insects find them too. Okay, so here is some food for thought for you. Is insects feeding on plants always a bad thing? What do you think? Well, actually, you might always think that it's a bad thing, and clearly eating a lot of the plant could be very highly damaging. Like if certain pests, insect pests, are known to completely defoliate trees, eat all of the leaves on them, then the plants cannot photosynthesize and they will die before they're able to make new leaves. So that is clearly a very, very bad thing. And emerald ash borers, like eating plants and girdling the trees, very bad thing. But in other cases, some plants actually perform better when there are low amounts of herbivory present, which is an interesting thing. Okay, another good question is it better for an insect to be a specialist, oligophagous, or sorry, monophagous, phytophagous insect, or would it be better to be a generalist, a polyphagous, phytophagous insect? And why or why might not that be the case? Okay, so we'd previously discussed this for predators and parasitoids, so I would encourage you to look back on your notes or just think about what we had discussed previously. So now we're going to summarize this lecture. So going back from the beginning all the way to section 1. So plants and insects have been co-evolving with one another for millions of years. Oops, sorry, insects should be on there too. And the good part of this relationship is that many plants rely on insects for their own reproduction. Without insects, they wouldn't be able to make more plants for babies, which is a pretty amazing thing. And a few plants form even more specialized relationships with ants, form even more specialized relationships with insects. And the major examples that we talked about were ants and the way that they distribute seeds and also can protect plants by living inside of them. But we also took, in the reading assignments, there were also examples of like pitcher plant mosquitoes and other insects that live inside of plants and help benefit them. So the bad side of this relationship is that most insects, over 300,000 species, are phytophagous and can eat, and there are examples of insects that eat every single part of a plant. The leaves, the stems, the roots, the fruits, right, and the seeds. And many plants can defend themselves by making some highly specialized chemicals. Plants truly are nature's chemists. And the unexpected, at least I think it's pretty unexpected and very cool, is that plants can talk to one another to induce defenses. So this is something that you're going to be exploring more in this week's exploratory exercise. So I'm going to find a really good paper that has been written by one of the recipients of the Entomological Society of America's lifetime, really high, most prestigious awards. And her work is all about plants and plant communication with one another. So let's read a paper about that and write some fun things about it. So yeah, this is the lecture. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful to have it in short little chunks like this. Please do let me know if you have any questions. Send me emails. Come see me during office hours next week. Yeah, and have a wonderful day. Bye, guys.